Go ahead, Jess.
Well, good morning and welcome to Campfire Co-works. We are streaming live on Wednesday morning here. We are continuing a series on social media. Last week we worked on the fundamentals and the basics of figuring out how to set your goals for social media. And then this week we're going to actually roll into how do we actually start putting a strategic plan around getting those goals. So I am not going to take up a whole ton of time. I am going to be turning this over to Ashley this morning. She is our in-house expert on UX design and UX experience for our customers here. So she does that for us and then helps a lot of clients with that as well. We just want to say that if you like the content you hear today, please make sure that you subscribe to our channel to continue following the series. Give us a thumbs up or give us any kind of chats in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that today as Ashley goes through this presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Ashley and we're going to kick this off.
No one heard that.
Oh, no one heard a single thing.
No one heard a single thing. We're kicking off week 2 with a bang because I didn't have the right mic set up and they could vaguely hear that. So good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley. That was Jazz, wonderfully introducing us this morning. We're talking about communicating to your target audience this week. And last week we started with the why. This week we're kind of starting with the what and how will come next week. But we want to give you the framework to have a good solid base to work with going forward, kind of help you operate within the bumpers of so your messaging stays on point and you're reaching your desired target audience. So this is a big one for us here at Campfire. I tell everyone I know I run into when they're talking about any kind of marketing or even business in general, of this lesson that we've learned here, that learn to be the guide, not the hero. And this is something that we got from Don Miller in his program, which we'll get into going forward with the brand story or story brand. You'll hear us flip-flop the terms, but talking about the same thing of it's not necessarily what you're selling and how awesome it is, it's how your customer is finding and using it and how it's solving their problem. And sometimes we get really excited about our product and forget that it's not really about us, it's about them. So we're gonna talk about that a lot today. So last week we went into goal setting. We talked a lot about knowing the why behind your business so that you can properly communicate. And then this week, we're going to actually get into the planning part of building that story brand out and looking at your customer journey, user personas, and some of the brand assets you might currently have and whether or not they're actually serving your target customer or not. And then next week, we'll be looking at some execution things. And then week 4, we're again looking at kind of analyzing what we've got so far and then making adjustments going forward. So with strategic planning, we are looking at actionable steps that actually get me to my goals. A lot of the times with social media, some of the reasons you guys are probably even here today or listening in later is because you've been doing social media and it's not getting you any closer to what you envisioned it would do. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, and if you can't see the reward, it gets really frustrating and it makes you want to give up on social marketing. But if you didn't know those goals ahead of time, how do you know how to measure them, how to track if you're actually being successful or not? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So some key takeaways today. What problem are you solving for your customer? Do you know the answer to that yet? We talked a little bit about that last week, but again, we're going to reiterate that again this week. You have to know what problem it is you're solving in order to be able to communicate with your people. Bless you. Choosing the platform that your target audience uses. Again, we a little bit got into that last week, but knowing, are your people on Facebook? Is that your target demographic? Who are you? Who are your people? Where are they at? Do you have a brand story? And then understanding the 7-part story brand framework, we'll get into that and kind of describe that if that's a new concept to you. And are your brand elements conveying your brand story? So what does your target customer want is a question we really need to ask ourselves. We often like get carried away. Yep, this is what I'm selling. It's gonna save the world. But if we don't flip it on its head and look at why are they getting it to begin with, like from an emotional standpoint, from a basic level of need, why is it that they're purchasing our product? What is it that they really want from us? And then we're looking at which platforms should we use. So this is where, if you haven't heard of a user persona before, this is a good practice to get into. Between the last slide and this slide, creating a user persona, and actually, Jazz, or you can have that in the Notion document for them. Okay. And anyone listening later on, if you'd like to have access to that Notion document, let us know. There will be a template that you can use, which makes this process a lot simpler. But what you're going to do is make basically a fictional character that has the qualities of your ideal customer. And that is going to go into, what are their needs? What are their pain points? What are some of the things that they like to do? Do they jog at 7 a.m.? Do they have kids? Are they married? Do they live out of town? Do they live in town? Do they have pets that they bring with them when they go on their walks? All these different things give you a baseline so that you can understand where your target customer is, like how often are they using social media? What time of day? If they work between hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. because they are a nurse aide or something, odds are they're not on Facebook at 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. in the morning. They're sleeping. So by building up those profiles and understanding who your people are and what they do, what they like, what they don't like, you can make targeted social media posts that actually will hit when they need to hit and touch on the right emotional responses because you have that framework to work with. And also understanding what is their age demographic. We like to say Facebook tends to be the 35 plus crowd at this point. If you're looking at TikTok, odds are they're probably not on there. So where are the people you're trying to target? And this might be, we talked about last week, Spencer had mentioned, what if I want to go outside my current target audience to a different age demographic? That's okay. That's why you have these user personas, so that if you do have a variety of target customers and they're being served in different ways, you can create different marketing campaigns specifically targeting one type of user persona. And they're going to be on TikTok because they're the younger generation. And then you have another campaign that's targeting, maybe you're advertising for Angry Bear, and that's going to be, maybe on Facebook would be a better place to do that, or on Pinterest if you're trying to get people from out of town, or Instagram if it's something that's really image heavy and you're leaning into the more artistic crowd. So those user personas will really help you stay focused and targeted in and not just be kind of slinging things all around. And it doesn't make this process as complicated as it needs to be. It makes it a lot easier. You don't have to think about things as much because you're going to continue to use these frameworks going forward. Any questions from you guys on this one? Like, do you have any insights on maybe where you've been using it? And do you feel like it's going well, or do you feel like maybe you need to switch some things up?
I don't think so. Chris is, he's kind of teaching me. There's a lot of metrics on Instagram that I had no idea about. Well, I've never had a business page, but he said basically exactly what you just said. Older crowd is going to be more on Facebook, whereas our younger crowd is going to be on Instagram. So we do have to make sure we're still engaging both of them.
Are you primarily only using those two platforms right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook. I don't think Yeah, we don't really do, I mean, and we have like our Google reviews and there's Untapped,
Mhm.
which, you know, is a customer-based platform, but yeah, we don't really use Twitter or anything like that.
Do you guys have like, going in from last week, did you guys talk about like what your guys' goal is as far as like what you guys are trying to do as far as growing, your guys' brand?
So yes and no. So my goal is to kind of see what's more engaging to the customers, am I just sharing, if somebody tags us in one of their stories and I add that to our story, but you also don't want to post too much. So as of right now, the goal is just kind of learning. We have a pretty big following on both of those platforms. I'm coming into something that's already kind of been started and established. So basically just getting me comfortable making those posts, not having to check in with Chris so often and stuff like that. So that's our short-term goal right now.
Cool.
And I would say definitely like setting up some user personas will help make it like not so complicated for yourself,
Yeah.
Yeah, like are you trying, because I
think
think
it's
about
fun.
your guys' business, for instance, and thinking about, Marquette becoming more of a, destination location of, are you trying to primarily get the fundamentals of locals being like, hey, we're really invested in your brand here? Or are you trying to be like, hey, we're trying to capture a lot of like travelers that are coming in and
Yes.
wanting them to take our brand other places because they see this as like, hey, this is a really cool brand.
Yes.
It's got a certain, I kind of think about people who wear certain merch, for instance, because it makes them feel like I'm part of that club.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So are we trying to get people, are you getting them to, feel that way if they're coming here and then leaving kind of thing?
Right, yeah. Well, and can I say both? Like we want to cater, so our merch game has like really stepped up the past couple of years, especially this last summer. We sold so much merch. We were having to restock multiple times a day, just with all the travelers coming through, but even over Christmas, a lot of people come in, if they're here for college or whatever, and, they'll send these gifts elsewhere.
So that's a great, red flag of, okay, our people from out of town love merch. So things to post.
Well, yeah.
Every time you get a new merch drop, right?
Right, yeah, we just did a collab with 906 Company for beer soap. So, and so we just, shared that and made that available on our online store and all that kind of stuff. So, and our online store, you can ship and it's great.
Cool, that's awesome. So moving on, again, really take the time to set these up ahead of time. It's just gonna make your life so much easier. Now, we're gonna just barely skim the surface with the story brand. This is a whole course that you can take with Dawn Miller. And I highly recommend it if you can't currently communicate what it is you do for people. This is a great course to take to help you solidify what it is, your messaging, whether that be on your website, whether it be in your marketing materials, whether that be verbally. In 7 seconds, can you tell somebody what it is that you do? It seems easy, but it's not. 7 seconds is a small amount of time. So I'm just gonna hop over to this video here. Take a quick peek.
Story Brand by Donald Miller. In building a story brand, Donald Miller guides you through a framework to help you clarify your message so customers will listen. These days, it's desperately hard to get anybody's attention. The average consumer encounters 3,000 commercial messages a day, and most of them get ignored. In building a story brand, Donald Miller introduces us to a powerful framework that has been getting and keeping people's attention for thousands of years. If you want to get attention for your prospects, services, or for yourself, the author teaches you how by using a powerful story formula. Here's an example. Kyle Schultz was a photographer who created a course to teach parents how to take better photos of their kids. He launched with $28,000 in sales. His message was the power of photography in the hands of parents. After working through the story brand framework, his messaging evolved to, we help parents take better pics, And the copy on his website went from 1,000 words down to less than 200 words. Instead of telling a confusing story, Kyle invited customers into a story. The result? His second launch to the same email list produced $103,000 in sales. Don't think for a second this book is about learning to tell your story. In fact, the author argues that telling your story is a great way to go bankrupt. Instead, try inviting customers into a story. Companies need to understand that the brand is not the hero. The customer is the hero. That's the only way to engage them. And the brand's role is to guide the hero successfully through their challenges. You want your brand to be the Yoda to Luke Skywalker, your customer. So how do you accomplish this? How do you invite a customer into a story? Every memorable story is built on a simple framework. A hero has a problem, meets a guide who gives them a plan, and calls them to action. Failure would be devastating, but the guide navigates the hero to success. Take any blockbuster movie and you'll see this framework applies. Most companies waste enormous amounts of money trying to tell their story. The truth is, nobody cares. But every human being wants to be invited into a story. They want you to offer them a vision of a better life, help them overcome challenges, act as their guide, and take them to a climactic scene in which their story ends happily. Start by going to your homepage. Are you making the story about you or the customer? As you're reading the book, take notes along the way. Brainstorm and craft a clearer message for your brand, and then update all your communications. Your marketing should invite your customer into a story. If it doesn't, you're certainly losing thousands of dollars, and you might even be losing millions.
So that's just kind of a slight introduction again. I highly recommend Don Miller's course if you want to learn more about your brand story. But it at least gives
like
you
a book or is it a whole?
It's like an online.
There's a
video
book
course.
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long is it typically? Like, is it super involved? Not super involved?
Well, he has a full, he's got a full course called Business Made Simple. And the brand story is one of the pieces in there. He does go in and he actually breaks through not only how to write your story, but then he takes you into the actual how you apply that to your specific marketing. He shows you how to apply it to your website so that your website is actually telling a proper story. Like he goes through each of the pieces of your marketing material to make sure that all of your marketing material, and I wanna say it's like $250 for a full year of access to it. So it's not horrible, and honestly, he charges like $5,000 for his actually live events, so I mean, he's world renowned when it comes to that. And it made a huge difference even in like, we've gone through it multiple times, and every time we think about our customers now, we are really like, okay, is this following the storyline, are we doing the right framework?
So this kind of just gives a bit of an overview of what that framework looks like. So you have your character. You have the character with a problem, who meets a guide, gives them a plan, and calls them to action. And that results in either success or failure. So when you think of like all of the great movie stories, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter to an extent, they follow this line of progress, and it wouldn't make sense in your brain to think that Yoda was the star of Star Wars. You're the hero of Star Wars. To an extent, they're the ones that are leading the true star. They take kind of that back role. And as business owners, sometimes it's hard for us to not want to be on the front stage because we just are so excited to tell people about what it is that we have to offer the world. And we forget that actually we need to be the ones guiding the customers through this whole process instead of standing on top of the soapbox. So the character, who is your target customer? Again, this goes out, build out that user persona once you kind of define a lot of those attributes. Again, there's templates that can help you do this to make it not such a hard process of having to think too hard about it. And then complete a user journey map. If you don't know what that is, it's something you can also find a template for. But it basically follows the emotional journey of your target customer from the time that they first see and interact with your product or service till all the way through the end of interacting after the fact, and whether they circle back around or not. And you need to know, okay, are they really upset because they are frustrated that they can't solve their problem? And then, oh, they see your ad and they like have some hope, right? Of, oh, maybe this is something that's gonna help me. For instance, I had acne for like 20 years, and every time I saw an ad, I'd be like, oh, maybe this is it, right? And I'd get really excited. And then I would buy the product, which made me feel a little, oh, I don't know, because I've had past experiences of that not working well. And then I get the product and I use it, and I'm hopeful again because maybe this is gonna happen. And then I get into the results section of that of, did it have success or did it have failure? And so if you map that out for your customers, you can really understand where to tap into their emotional needs and understand your customers more.
I think I could put a point on that. Like, for instance, like you said, with the acne, maybe the ad becomes, I know you've used XYZ products before and you felt defeated because they didn't get you the results. Well, we have formulated this extra piece that's gonna help you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Now your ad is gonna be like
targeting
tapping
those
into
people
that.
because you understand where they were at before. And if you don't do that process, you can't understand the history of your people and where they've come from to the point where they got to you. And it's really important that you actually recognize that. That's gonna help connect with them. So what is the problem your product or service solves? Really defining that well. Again, trying to get it into like 1 or 2 sentences is a very basic, at a very basic level. The brand story does a really good job of making sure you do that in the right way. How do you feel, or how do they feel about it? So how do they feel about their problem in the moment? Is it something catastrophic that, you know, maybe you offer some kind of medical service? Obviously, that's going to be a really emotional and scary thing for them, but something like the brewery, that's more fun, right? Lighthearted. So how do they feel in the moment of, man, I really want a beer. Now it's been a long day. You know, they're exhausted, versus someone who maybe found out they had cancer. That's going to be a totally different approach. So really understanding that emotional journey. And what barriers are they experiencing? Again, have they tried 20 products before they got to yours? Do they have financial barriers? Do they have location barriers? Maybe they live in a different country and you don't ship to them. So things like that. How is your target customer finding and interacting with your product or service? Do you have a website? Do you have the social media channels in the proper places? Are you putting the ads in the proper social media channels to reach your target customers? These algorithms are getting more and more ridiculous every day. And if we're not keeping up with understanding the ins and outs of that process, we might not be even getting in front of the right people. So making sure that you understand where they're at. How do they feel throughout that process of scrolling through Facebook? Are they exhausted? Are they frustrated with all the ads on their Facebook page? And maybe there's a different way you should be interacting with them that's more genuine. How do they view you against your competitors? Are you currently something that they know about? Is it favorable? Are people talking about you? Like you said that people are constantly posting, to your page. That's amazing that you already have that you've reached that level where people are talking about you and doing a lot of the work for you. That's great. And then you got to give them a plan. So are you properly communicating your solution to your target customer? Do they understand how your product solves their problem? Is the copy on your website clear? Is the copy in your sales ad clear, or in your videos? Is it something that they can instantly understand and it's not overcomplicated? A lot of the times we get really carried away with jargon, and sometimes that doesn't come across where we think that they're gonna understand what it is we're trying to communicate, and they just need it nice and simple. Come grab a beer. Not, we make the excellent, we have the best hops around and we have a special brewing process that makes it, come have a beer, right? Simple, because that they're exhausted, right? You understand. They just want easy. So that's how you communicate with them. And where are they finding the solution? Is it, again, on your website that they're interacting? Is it on your socials? Is it through a friend that they know? And is it easy for them to get to? Is your website easy to navigate? Is it easy to find your phone number or your address on Google so that they can find your place? And we need to call them to action. A lot of the times we forget this part, or we just put something out there and we don't have any ask attached to it. Especially if you are trying to get engagement on social media. If you're just posting information at people, they're gonna be like, yep, okay, and just scroll. But if you have an ask, like a question, have you experienced this situation before? How you guys doing on a Monday morning? And you've got a picture of your coffee, like you're ready to go. Actually creating that engagement with your people. How easily are they able to adopt the solution, apply it to their problem? Are they able to look at your ad and click through and find your website and then find your product? Again, making sure that process is as simple as can be so that they don't get lost, because everyone's being constantly bombarded these days with information overload. Why would they choose you if your process is too complicated for them to solve their problem? And that results in either the success or failure. So how do your customers feel after using your product or service? Are you asking them? Are you following up? How was your visit? How did your supplement go the last time you bought it? Do you feel like it was a good fit for you? Maybe we need to adjust something for you. Really connecting with your customers. And you can do that on socials. It's a great place for people to, encourage people to leave you product reviews if they had a great time, because if we're not reaching out, odds are they're going to get lost in the shuffle and they're going to forget to post that 5-star review for you. So making sure that you're kind of following through. So success. Did they completely solve their problem, or was there feedback to make improvements? Are you collecting it? How do you know that you're successful in solving your customer's problem? Did you set a goal or a target to know whether or not, and are you able to measure whether or not that they had success after interacting with your product or service? And then failure, if they aren't able to, if you didn't solve their problem, are you following up with them to ask what was wrong? A lot of the times we're afraid to do this, especially if we know somebody had a bad experience. We're afraid to reach out, and especially publicly. But that also can be a good thing for you, because people will feel you're more genuine. You actually care about them, and it might be uncomfortable in the moment, but in the end, you'll actually find that you're not the hero. You don't need to be the hero. You're the guide, and if you're not guiding them to success, you need to actually understand where you went wrong in order to help them back on the right path.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Something else that I think that, when you have brands that are also really close to yours, I guess I'm thinking about you guys having another large brewery in the same town as you, is also understanding who your customers are, so you know who your customers are not, and being okay with communicating that to them, so that it's like, you either want 5 stars or you want 1 star. You really don't want 3 stars, because you're for who you're for. Because if you start trying to get the 1-star people to convert to 5 stars, likely your culture and your environment is going to make the 5 stars disappear, because they're going to be like, oh, things are changing. So being okay with, and we do this a lot in our business, is that there are other alternatives to people using, let's say, event space. There's other alternatives for people to use for workspace. There's all kinds of different things, and knowing our customers who they really are allows us to say, hey, we might not be the right fit for you guys, but hey, maybe you should check out this and that. And what that's done for us a lot of times is that person might go somewhere else, but they're now more willing to recommend other people to us because they know who we are really for. And we actually get more of our ideal customers coming to us. You know what I'm saying? So just thinking about that when you're looking at your failures and success, making sure that you're not trying to appease some people. That feedback should help you know, are these really my real customers, or should I be turning them away to my competitors so that I can get more of my actual ideal customers?
And it's totally okay to respond, to 1 stars with, at least a message of hearing them. But again, yes, you don't have to switch your entire business model just because one person didn't like your product. If you're serving other people and they're having success, then yeah, they're probably not your ideal customer. And you just say, thanks, I'm sorry you had a bad experience, the general response to that kind of thing. So now we'll kind of get a little bit into the brand elements and are they communicating your brand story? So this gets into your fonts, your color palettes, your logos, your graphics, your photography. If you haven't done social media before, or if you've been doing it and you're not incorporating your branding, there can be a disconnect for people. A lot of people have to see or visualize your brand several times before they can make like those connections and make those to make a decision. So making sure that everything you're putting out is connected and in line with your business goals. They're in line with your ideal customer and what they would expect from it. And also that you're using the proper graphics. There's so much stock photography out there. It's great that we have it, but if it's not in line with your overall branding, it's not going to serve you as best as possible. So trying to make sure that you have a good rapport and understanding of how you're crafting your socials and including your branding. So are your fonts readable? Is it cohesive with your overall brand story? We met with someone yesterday and they were talking about, we're looking at picking out a font for them and they want it to be really simple. Well, there's lots of simple fonts. There's hundreds and thousands of fonts. But how do you know what's correct? Well, understanding your target customer, you can kind of get a feel of like, okay, are they adventurous? Do they like, more of the classical type stuff? And you can kind of pick up on the vibes and tailor your branding around, things that they would like, but also that it fits what your product or service is at the same time. Colors, same thing. Colors actually say quite a bit. Sometimes we often just pick whatever we like, and that can be a bit of a mistake. But for instance, you'll see a lot of banks use the color blue because it builds trust. It means trust, or it means like clarity, or purple is a little bit more of like the aristocratic, royal, like luxurious. You'll see like Crown Royal uses purple and gold. For orange, it's creative colors. So you have, like different kind of art companies. We often use orange or yellows. So having some of that psychological discovery when you're looking at what kind of colors you're using, especially when you're trying to touch base with people on an emotional aspect. You don't want to be talking about something serious and have rainbow colors all over the place. Not as much as I love rainbow personally, but kind of understanding what it is that you're trying to communicate and using the proper brand colors to go ahead and do that. And then also making sure that your logo is clear and concise and people recognize it and they say, yep, that's Ordoc. I know that's Ordoc. It's memorable for them. And then is it communicating your brand story? Some of this is hard and, it might take having an agency do a lot of this work for you, but is it something that your target customers are going to feel excited wearing on their shirt? Are they going to want to buy it for their friends and family because it feels, cool to wear something from the Ordoc? Or same thing with Marquette Nutrition. You guys have a very big following where people buy your merch too. So, and obviously you guys are more established, but for someone just getting started, it's something that you really want to think about when you're kind of doing some of that discovery. But too, on your social media, is the way you're using your logo proper? Can people see that, are you using a logo that has tiny text around it that people can't really even read? Is it, recognizable? And same thing with the graphics and photography. They should be communicating that same brand story. So overall, when you're looking at kind of taking all of this we talked about today and wrapping it together, consistency is going to be key. So do you have a brand kit that has all your colors, logos, fonts, all the variations and rules that go along with that, so that when you're making social media posts, especially when you've got multiple people doing your social media management, do they have access to the proper tools in the toolkit to do that? Do you have a list of keywords that you've researched that are going to be implemented into your social media that are targeted to your ideal customers? Do you have that in a document, again, that everyone can utilize and that you can pull back and make sure you're staying consistent to keep working towards the goals you set for your social media? And then do you have those user personas fleshed out so that you can keep coming back and asking yourself before you post something, is this going to reach my ideal customer? Does this feed into what they want to hear and learn about? And that is what we have for today. Does anybody have any questions? Because that was a lot again.
So, I know you talked about at the very beginning, like how you certainly can have more than like one
Persona.
Customer or like
Yes.
customer type. So when you're working on like what are going to be the fonts and the colors and stuff that appeal to your ideal customers, like MPT Nutrition, I would say that the two like biggest target markets for us, I think the biggest one is like people who have families who are working, so like 30 to 50 years old is
Yep.
kind of like they're the ones that are coming in for meal prep, they're the ones that need the most help with weight loss, they're the ones who are most confused for nutrition, and they have, they're not 18 years old anymore. So I think that's like truly our target market. But there's certainly something to be said for like the like 18 to upper 20s who are in more of the fitness realm of things. And so that's two like very different demographics, and it's like you're trying to cater
To
to
both.
both of them.
Yes.
So like how do you determine what your brand scheme should be and everything when you have two very different apps?
And
So
you-
I think even like with your guys', and this may even be like, I know that you guys probably even do this too, is that a lot of times brands, like what you're talking about becomes like think about it like departments, right? Like think about like Google, right? Google is a search, right? But then they have a whole bunch of other product lines that come underneath it. They got Google Maps, they got Gmail, they got all these. Notice they have some brand elements that cross over, and then they have some brand elements that are specific to that line. So when you're thinking about it, you have the big umbrella of health and nutrition, and a lot of your user personas are all gonna fall underneath that category. So you wanna have user elements that are hitting all of those, that core. But then you might be starting to think about, maybe you have a single, font that is like a header font that is used with your fonts through all of your brand, but that font is specifically used for your younger audience and when you're doing everything that comes to supplements, your pre-workout, your vitamins and all that. And then maybe you have a different header font that still goes with your regular body, because you probably only want to have like 2 fonts when you're using your stuff. And that might be what you're targeting and that might be the only differentiator between the two, but it helps signify maybe a little bit more fun, edgy, and a little bit more like older, consistent. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to completely throw everything out of the door, but you want to have some brand elements that are pretty consistent, that this is Marquette Nutrition, but this is what's for me in Marquette Nutrition versus this is what's for this person.
I just think of like, I don't know if you know this, but like Victoria's Secret, how you walk in and then there's like pink, but it's like the same store, but it's not the same store.
Exactly.
And that's, that's a perfect example. But you notice, even with the pink brand, the crossover is they have red and pink, right? The pink brand is primarily using just that pink color through all of their branding. They have maybe another slight variation shade that's making it like the dark pink and a light pink. Whereas the rest of Victoria's Secret is the red and the pink, right? So they didn't completely throw out their colors, but they've added in another shade maybe to that specific brand because it's helping them bring
It's more
a crossover.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to all of a sudden be like, okay, well, this is the pink brand, now let's throw in orange, yellow, it would dilute their colors altogether, but they just use something to complement that. However, like what Ashley was saying with the consistency, you're gonna want to agree upon that stuff ahead of time and say, whenever we are talking to this persona, we always use only, I'm never gonna bring red over to this now because I'm only talking about the pink
So just
brand.
on a practical level, like, obviously if you walk into a store, yes, you can see the differences there, but like on a social media post, if you're posting a smoothie, what does that even mean as far as colors and not colors,
Right.
like?
Well, I mean, I think you can add in brand elements around your stuff, like maybe you're putting a border around all of your images. There might be things that you're doing that's gonna be that, but also remember, if you start targeting in on, let's say, Instagram versus Facebook, ideally, the people who are on Facebook would never see your Instagram post probably, because they're probably not on that to that degree, right? So I think that there's some thinking through it from a standpoint of imagine your user personas as product lines, because you're literally targeting to that specific person, right? And this might help with you guys. You might have your local audience that are going to be very targeted in on specific things that might be different than the people who are looking at your brand from I want to take this with me and I want to go.
The traveler's lens.
Do you have anything else you wanted to say on that?
No, I think that was great. And again, like, it doesn't have to be all the things. It doesn't have to be you have a different font and brand, color scheme and logo and all the things, but you want to differentiate enough if you are like doing it on a different platform. Maybe you speak, my camera's like way off. Sorry guys. Maybe you speak differently, just the way you're verbalizing and the sentence structure, the way you talk with someone is going to be more relaxed if they're younger versus if you're targeting like a 60-year-old, you're probably going to try and be a little bit more professional and functional because you're trying to build the trust differently than you would with the younger person.
That's why I think it may be difficult because it's a little bit of an exercise to do this, but literally having a document where you've picked out like 3 people that are your own people. These are the 3 people. Give them names, give them real occupations, have your colors, have your stuff all in one document. You see like, yes, this person would do that. And every time you make something, you ask yourself, which one of these people is buying this thing? If I put this out, they'd be like, yes, that's me. Because then when you're thinking through it as you're posting it, you're literally looking like, oh, Todd loves to get a pump in or whatever. This is the guy. I'm literally designing this post to find a whole bunch more Todds. Like you might even have 2 other people that are there. Maybe Tiffany and Janet are not going to be as interested as someone who's like Todd, because this is who that person you're trying to talk to. Even though they're all in that same umbrella, they all love to be more healthy and fitness. They're not the same as your older demographic, but it's easy if you have like picked out, and this is, me and Ashley have gone through this exercise plenty of times where we have very specific users, and honestly, we base ours now, like, as we've gotten some specific users, we're like, oh, this person is like that member. This person is like that member, and started putting them in buckets.
And to be clear, you don't want it to be an actual person.
Yeah.
Like, don't just take one
Yeah.
actual customer, because you need like a variety of,
I said you have that, like a document or something.
Yeah, for a template.
Yep, and I actually, in the Notion document, I actually have added in some of these things, and I think there's a couple more Ashley can add in, like maybe a few like of the color theory, and even Don Miller's building your brand story. If you can flip, do you have the Notion document you can flip to? It's gonna be in the other, it's not gonna be in our campfire one, it's gonna be in the other campfire one. There you go. All right. On that one there, and then slide down a little bit, keep going. When you get to where the tools and reference links are. One of the things that I did for Do Your Brand exercise, so Don Miller does, it's a free, you could just use your name, you just need an email to do, but he has a mystorybrand.com, and it basically lays out that framework. So if you use your email, you can actually get this template here where it's like, he's got little videos you can play too, where he explains like the character. So it's like, what does the character want? He actually kind of goes through a little bit of like how to understand that. And then you can actually write in all of your answers. And when you're done, you can actually download that document, and that can be how you can start your user persona. And so I would do a story brand like that for every different persona that I have. Like, oh, here's this person, this fictional person. This is what they want. Here, who's the villain in their story? You know, who's the, you know, what's their external problem they have? What's their internal, like, so external versus internal, like Ashley was saying, is the external problem might be is like, you know, I have acne on the outside of my face and it looks ugly, right? The internal might be is I don't feel as confident. I don't like to go out into public venues because I feel everyone's looking at my face. So I feel like I'm lonely, I'm, you know, all these things. And so philosophical is, it should be like, no one should be excluded from a group simply because their exterior is not as beautiful as everyone else. Like, that's the philosophical thing. So, you know, that's where, you know, as the guide, let's say you're talking about, you know, proactive, for instance, and they would have been like, hey, we know how you feel. You know, our founders also struggle with acne, and that's why we developed this amazing solution, you know. And so then their authority is, we've helped over 100,000 people clear their acne, you know, so that's how they know that they can do it. Here's your process. So it's really good if you just go through the videos and just kind of, he'll tell you a little bit more about it. And these videos are kind of little clips that are cut from his actual courses that Ashley was talking about.
And we have your guys' emails, so we'll make sure we share that, the Notion document afterwards with you guys. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you for joining online. Thank you for joining online as well. And we'll be back next week. We are only recording once this week, and we will be back next week with some execution. So finally, I think that's kind of what everybody expects when they're like, oh, I'm going to learn social media marketing. We're making posts, right? Well, now we are. we built you up with some of the stuff, the framework that you need to get started. And next week, we'll actually be executing and creating some posts. So tune in next week, next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. And thank you so much for joining us. Remember, you can hop in the Discord. The link will be in the description. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to us. And the Notion document is also available if you'd like. You can email us directly. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great rest of the day.